It's Platt. Today I try a dry beer. That's next to Platt's Beer of the Week. So the particular beer I have today is Asahi, more specifically Asahi Dry. Even though most people just refer to this as Asahi, it's their dry. A little background to Asahi. Asahi was founded in 1889 in Osaka, Japan. It was at the time known as the Osaka Beer Company, has changed names over the years and now is Asahi. Digging into their background, I did find some dark days for them. Apparently during World War I, they utilized German POWs to work in the brewery. Now I didn't find out whether this is one of those things where they just happened to find out some German prisoners worked in a brewery and, hey guys, you want to help us out kind of thing, or it's kind of a forced labor thing, but still not necessarily a great day in their history, to say the least. Now today the current company is Asahi Beverage. The brewery is just a division. Asahi Beverage Company is a massive, massive company with tons of brands. Besides beers, they're into spirits, ciders, soft drinks, bottled waters, energy drinks. The list kind of goes on and on. Different than, let's say, Heineken and Carlsberg or AB InBev, where it's just different beer brands. They have all kinds of beverage brands. Apparently they distribute Pepsi, Schweppes, and Gatorade products to Australia, just to kind of give you an idea just how big the business is. As far as their spirits line go, they have a full line of spirits: vodka, rum, gin, scotch, tequilas. Now, none of the brands are huge, but I got a feeling if I walked into the Hard Rock Cafe or TGI Fridays in Melbourne, Australia, that bar rail, their well stuff, is probably going to be a lot of these brands, which again is a huge market unto itself. Speaking of markets, they control roughly 37% of the Japanese beer market. That's more than a third. That's pretty massive. Besides the Japanese beer market, though, they also control a lot of, a big chunk of other countries' beer markets: Czechoslovakia, Poland, Romania, Italy. This company has reached far and wide. And besides the brands that they either produce or distribute, they also own pieces of a lot of other breweries: Grolsch, Peroni, Carlton, and United Breweries. Again, Asahi is a major, major player in the beverage world. One unique thing about Asahi is their corporate headquarters are in Tokyo, and it's one of the more renowned buildings there in the Tokyo metro area, referred to as the Asahi Beer Hall. There's a golden flame on top. Some people say that it's more like the head of a beer being blown off by the wind or whatever, and some locals even refer to it as the golden turd. But the Asahi Beer Hall is a big part of the Tokyo skyline, to say the least. One other thing that makes Asahi pretty interesting is they've had 3 different flagship beers over the year. You know, most companies just have one, but they've had 3. The first one was Asahi Draft, all the way back in 1892. It was one of their original beers, the first one to gain real traction, and for about the first 60 or so years of the company, it was their flagship beer. That was until 1957 when they came out with Asahi Gold. Now, Asahi Gold is kind of more what you'd consider an American premium lager, in the vein of like a Miller High Life or Coors Original, just that classic golden lager. This beer was probably pasteurized, which made it easier for canning and bottling. And at the time, Japan, they were modeling a lot of, there's still a lot of American influence there. So the beer style was probably, again, in that kind of American vein. That was the flagship beer all the way up until 1987 when they introduced Asahi Dry. Now, I've talked about this in other Japanese beer videos. They are highly influenced by the Germans. Either they directly hired Germans to help them open some of these breweries, or they sent their people to Germany to train under German brewmasters. But again, a lot of influence, and they claim that they modeled this beer after some northern German beer styles that had more of a drier finish. Now, when this beer was released, it immediately caught traction in Japan. They liked the dryness of the beer, the crispness of the beer, and it helped Asahi overtake Kirin for #1 in the Japanese beer market. Like I said, the beer really gained traction. Besides this particular beer, they do brew other styles of beers. They have a stout, a black lager, a pilsner. I think they have like a light and then an ultra light. They do not, however, dive into the world of IPAs or sours or pastry stouts or stuff like that. Just a few simple line of classic styles of beer. Well, before we try this particular beer, though, let's check out the stats. So today I thought I'd talk about what is a dry beer and how can you make a beer dry. These aren't the most popular style of beers, but it's been out there for a while. You know, there was Bud Dry, Michelob Dry. You know, here in the U.S. we went through that phase for a little bit. And other spots of the world, they're a little more favorable to it than here. So I thought I'd talk about it today. Basically what a dry beer is it lacks malt sweetness. When you malt barley, or in the brewing process, we extract the sugar out of the malted barley, and some of that sugar in beer does not get utilized by the yeast, and that carries over to your palate. So when you drink a beer and you get that little malt sweetness at the front of your tongue, that's what it is. These beers have less of that. They tend to because of that, they tend to have a shorter aftertaste. Some people refer to them as crisp because that flavor hits and then just goes. Not much to it. Again, what this really is about and how you make a beer drier is you allow the yeast to work through that sugar more. There's just less of that sugar to hit that front of your palate. The way these brewers do it is they generally let the beer ferment an extra day or two. At a lot of breweries, the brewmaster will kind of keep track of how much that sugar's been worked through, or the term they may use is specific gravity or degrees Plato. But once it hits a certain point like that, they'll go ahead and cold crash, basically drop the temperature, and that stops the yeast activity. And whatever sugar's left over, that kind of makes it to your palate. Again, these they let go a little bit longer. You tend to get a little more alcohol, which kind of lightens up the body too. So you're losing some malt sweetness, gaining some alcohol, lightening up the body a little bit. A term you may hear is attenuation. That's just kind of I guess the best way to say it is like the efficiency of the yeast to work through that sugar. If you had a pound of malted barley that you brewed up, you should get X amount of sugar out of it. Now, how much of that actually gets to you in the glass, however, that's attenuation, how efficient that yeast worked through that before that sugar gets to you. So that's what a dry beer is it just has less of that malt sweetness, a little more alcohol, a little crisper, shorter aftertaste. So if you're ever wondering about dry beer, that's a dry beer, and let's drink the dry beer. All right, get a hint of malt, not a lot. This does have, even though it's in a brown bottle, a little that Euro lager kind of funkiness to it. Plenty of bubbles, nice clear beer, a light white head. Let's give it a try. That is definition of short and crisp. Man, just a slight hint of malt at the front, but the finish doesn't stay with you long. I do get a little hops on this, but it's short. The body's real light, kind of goes down real easy. I can imagine on a warm summer's day in Tokyo, this just going down nice and easy. Also, too, I can see a beer like this working with maybe some spicier foods and stuff like that. If I was going to, sit down and have, I can see it working with sushi too, but just, it's light enough on your palate that it's not going to overpower any food you had. So I can see this just going nice with food, where like sake, if I was to do like sake with a meal, Sake's viscous, a lot of sweetness, even if it's not a flavored sake. So this probably just pairs nice with a lot of food too. Nothing groundbreaking, but just a nice, crisp, clean beer that probably works well with a lot of foods. Well, I hope you liked this video. If you did, please subscribe down below. Also, please like the video because it lets YouTube know we're putting out good content. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or beers that you'd like me to try, please leave them in the comment section, or you can always contact me on the Twitter page. Till next time, bottoms up.